This morning I'm going to be talking about a subject that perhaps not everyone knows about. It's about the elementals and the effect that they have upon our lives. Some of you know about the elementals, but I doubt if any of you know about this aspect of the kind of power and control the elementals have over us. So I ask you to keep an open mind. When you're listening to this information, try to absorb it in an experiential way. And then after the talk is over this morning, make some notes, take some notes. When you go home this afternoon or after the service this morning, and then ask yourself, what kind of control now, in hindsight, do I recognize how those elementals had control over my life, my decisions, and so forth? In other words, if we don't turn this information into an experience, it's going to be intellectual. And if it remains intellectual, that goes into your logical mind, and your logical mind will, through the power of the elementals, cast it aside, cause you to be opinionated about these ideas and concepts, and walk away from it. But try not to do that. This is so powerful. I was so excited to put this talk together this morning that it's really made an impact on me. So hopefully it will make an impact on you. All right, let's start. It says in the Bible that God created man in his own image, right? Okay. Now, what we may not have considered is that that image is within us. That image is within us. That image is the foundation of who we are. See, it's not Estee Lauder. It's not Drakkar. That's men's cologne. This is going back a little ways. Remember, I'm trying to come up very quickly with some male fragrance, you know. In other words, it's not, it's not something outside of ourselves that we can change our looks. This is something that's within us. It's the image of the foundation of who we are. Now, according to the teaching, this image of the foundation of who we are has been spoiled and distorted and disfigured. Those three things: spoiled, disfigured, and distorted. Now, how have these things, this image of the foundation of who we are, how has this image been spoiled, distorted, and disfigured? That would be a good question to ask, right? Well, the answer is by the three elementals. The three elementals, or the three entities that relate to our physical body, our emotional body, our mental body. So we have a physical elemental, an emotional elemental, and a mental elemental that makes so much noise that we can no longer hear. And then we eventually go to sleep and become their victim. So that's that's the introduction. Scary, right? Oh, it gets scarier, believe me. So again, keep an open mind to what I'm saying here. Now, the first thing is that these elementals do many things. When we make a decision, for example, when we make a decision and speak about it, the elementals then go against that decision. They cannot wait to spoil and distort our decisions and plans and visions. To give you a most immediate recent example of this, a young woman contacted me, wanted to come back into the teaching. She was so excited, and I was willing to bring her back into the teaching and willing to work with her personally and so forth. And a day later, one day after that decision was made, she became fearful. What caused that fear? When today we're so excited and we're so enthused and we're looking forward to this next major step that we're going to take in our life. We go to sleep at night, we wake up in the morning, I can't do that. How stupid. And then all the fears start flooding in to spoil and distort our decisions and our plans and our visions. What happens is these elementals want to suck us in and eventually make us one of them. For example, if you identify with your sex, you become your physical body. You become united with sex, and then what happens is you go crazy for it. That is all you want because that is all that you are. Likewise, you may become your stomach, or your liquor, or your gossip, or your slander, or your malice. You see how it goes from the more dense to the less dense and less dense, physical, emotional, mental. Now, the physical elemental has 5 characteristics. The emotional elemental takes the cake, for it has 7 characteristics, and the mental elemental has 5. So altogether, these elementals use all 17 characteristics to get us and to spoil the initial image that God projected within us. 17 different characteristics that try to sabotage us, to sabotage and distort our decisions and plans and visions. The Spirit took form, that's us, our divinity, our divine spark, took form and became the human spirit charged with God's purpose. See, this is God's idea for us. So, what are we going to do? What we're going to try to do is untangle ourselves from these 3 so-called enemies working within us. Of course, they're not really our enemies, but they are simply ignorant about our purpose. Okay, so now we can sit back and relax a little bit. And because they are tied to our bodies and run with us, we are supposed to carry them forward. See, that is a key factor here. We, our consciousness, our soul, our divinity, is supposed to carry them forward. But instead, we're letting them pull us backward. So it depends on who is stronger, the bodies or the elementals. So let us say that we are the horse carrying the carriage. We're the horse, right? And we're carrying that carriage. But sometimes we load our carriage too full. And when we start to climb the mountain, the carriage pulls us back down the hill. Once we start climbing, see why Beverly read what she read this morning in the verse, see how they work together. Once we start climbing, not while we are on the flat road or even the freeway, the test begins. Either the horse is going to carry us forward or the load is going to carry us backward. The load is the physical and the emotional or astral and mental elementals. And they're Maya illusions and glamours. See, the Maya illusions, or Maya glamours and illusions of the elementals is what causes us to go backwards. If they increase this load, we're going to have a difficult time climbing to the summit. So there are 3 methods by which you may disengage yourselves from these elementals. You might want to write this down. Purification. This is why we had the meditation this morning on purification. Renunciation is the second method, and the third is self-confession. Okay, now we're going to go more deeply into this idea about the 3 elementals. Everything in the world is based on the dynamism of thought. Okay, everything in the world is based on the dynamism of thought. You know, we have this old ancient saying of energy follows thought. We all know energy follows thought. What you don't typically think about in that phrase is energy of the physical elemental, energy of the astral or emotional elemental, energy that's following your mental elemental. How are you directing that energy following your thought? See, this takes it more deeply out of the exoteric into the esoteric. Dynamism of thought. So we're going to use this technique to free ourselves from our enemies within. To understand dynamism of thought, I'm going to give you the answer, but please bear with me, for I must share it in bits and pieces to make it more easily understood. Now, I've given everyone here a copy of the diagram, and we're going to put this diagram up on the webinar. It's a very simple diagram, and I'm going to only be referencing it, you know, very simply. But I want you to use your imagination with this diagram, that these are levels of consciousness, but also spheres of existence, going from the dense physical way out into cosmic space that we can perhaps imagine, but even in that imagination it's limited. So this diagram shows, in this part of the diagram, it shows the cosmic physical plane, but then it goes beyond, you know, into finer and finer and finer substance for the cosmic astral plane and the cosmic mental plane. And it's this cosmic mental plane I'm going to be referencing in a second. But it goes into the cosmic Buddhic, cosmic atmic, cosmic monadic, and cosmic Adi or divine substance. So there's a lot going on out there in this space of that we call universe that we're not even in contact yet with. I don't want to lose this diagram. Okay. So, as I explained, there are 7 cosmic planes, starting from the bottom up. These cosmic planes start with the physical and then continues up astral, mental, intuitional, atmic, monadic into divine cosmic planes. the cosmic astral and the cosmic mental plane. Not physical cosmic, cosmic astral and cosmic mental. These planes are divided into two sections, higher and lower. Okay, that's the first. I'm trying to put this together, bits and pieces, okay? Our solar logos created all archetypes. This is key now. What's coming up is a key point to hear, which are thought forms in the lower cosmic mental plane. The lower cosmic mental plane. They are not in the higher cosmic plane yet because our logos, our solar logos, is preparing to transcend himself to go from the lower cosmic mental plane to the higher cosmic mental plane. As we all should be doing as well. As above, so below. So those are a lot of words. Those are a lot of words. Basically, or essentially, what it's telling us is that the solar logos is working similarly to ourselves, but with a much finer, more refined substance of energy than we as human beings are. So for us, at our level, in our human stage, everything is created first on the lower cosmic mental plane as a thought form, the dynamism of thought. Are we together? Okay. For example, the solar logos thought about a flower, and the flower eventually took form on the mental plane. Then the astral plane. And eventually it came into manifestation on the physical plane. So the next time you pull out a flower, think of what it took to come into full blossom. Right? He imagined us as a human soul exactly that way. He imagined a flower, but we descended into matter, and when we descended into matter, we became entrapped in mud. And because we needed three bodies, these three elementals grabbed us, and they said, if you want us to be your bodies, we want our share. I know. And we said, okay, I will use you and you can use me. Let us be friends. Now, I want to ask you something. This coming issue of Meditation Monthly International is featuring the topic of friendship. We're actually featuring the keynote article is written by Daniel Enten, who is the director of the Nicholas Roerich Museum and the Agni Yoga Society. And in that article, he talks about friendships. And then we compiled information, more information about friendships. And based on the elementals, that we want to be friends with these elementals, you know, I encourage you to expand your understanding of what friendship is all about and to read MMI, which will come out probably toward the middle or the end of this week. After you read it, then read a chapter in the book called Challenge for Discipleship by Torkim Serdarian, a book you can find in our online bookstore. There's a chapter in that book titled How to Be Your Own Friend. There are many secret meanings to it. Learn how to be friends with your elementals. You should not be a slave to them, nor they to you, because you are a higher divine idea, right? Okay. Your purpose is eventually to make your elementals become, now listen to this carefully, your purpose is to make those elementals become human beings by initiating them. For example, your physical, emotional, or your physical elemental worked millions of years to become an astral elemental. Your physical elemental worked millions of years. I'm still putting all the bits and pieces together, by the way. Okay, so hang in there with me. The physical elemental worked millions of years to become an astral elemental. The astral elemental stuck himself to millions of people so that eventually he became a mental elemental. As we advance mentally, our mental elemental will also take advanced initiations. Eventually, a time will come when the elemental will create individuality and become a human soul. Your greatest friends in the future will be your own elementals. So be good to them. Discipline and teach them how to respect your foundation, your vision and archetype, so that they do not pull you down and hinder your path to perfection. Now, in the meantime, now we're going to get into some heavier ideas here, so don't fall asleep on me, okay? In the meantime, we're going to deal with them in such a smart way that they do not identify with us, thinking that they are the soul and running the show. You are running the soul, the show. Your soul is running the show. And they are actors. The elementals are actors. Okay? Your soul is running the show, and the elementals are the actors. The moment you really grasp this, you will never have any problem with yourself. You're going to say to them, you are actors. Act this way, then act that way. Do this until they learn. But as long as you are identified with them, you do not have a chance to control and lead them into initiations or onto the path of perfection. So this is why I said, yes, you can come back into the teaching, giving that person this great opportunity. But the elemental still had a control through fear. Now it gets a little heavier. Are you ready? Anyone not? I can stop right here. We may or may not have the same elementals for every incarnation. If you really hurt your elementals, they will not want to stay with you. If you become insane and want to drink all the time, the physical elemental may say, this man is crazy. I don't like him. The physical elemental hates sickness, and you are forcing an illness onto the body. The physical elemental wants to be as healthy as you want to be. Health for the physical elemental is his greatest joy. He does not want to be deprived of that joy, but we deprive him. Then he said, I don't want to be this person. So he leaves, and when the time comes for you to be born, another sneaky, low-level elemental becomes your physical elemental. Because this lower level physical elemental was now listen to this very carefully, because this lower level physical elemental was previously connected with a stupid man or a rascal, you become a double personality in your physical body. You want one thing while your body wants another. And you do not understand why this is happening. The elemental is doing this because it is connected with and influenced by the computer of its former owner. Exactly. When that computer starts to act, our physical elemental acts against our own will and control. This situation can occur in not only our physical, but also our astral and mental levels. Now I'm going to say something that may make you very uncomfortable. But that is okay, because it is going to make you think about yourself. Now, psychologists, even various Latin, Greek, or Sanskrit scholars, give names to this particular condition. And I could share some of those names with you, but it's not important. It's not the names that matter. The fact is that we are acting double. If a person who is formally connected with that elemental is now upset, our current elemental also will be upset. Suppose a boy originally had number 1 elemental, but left him because of his level. And then he attracts a number 6 level elemental. When number 1 leaves him, it is attracted to someone else. And this is how people who have exchanged their elementals become magnetically tied to one another. So if we take an example, a marriage, and your family says, how could he marry someone like that? Or how could she marry someone like that? This is your answer. Or you could say, I raised that kid so differently from what he has become today, how he thinks, and so forth. This is how it happened. Now let's say that you are wearing an elemental that came to you from a girl who does not use it anymore. Then you give it to someone else. All 3 of you are now connected to each other. This is why we say don't have sex before you get married. It is possible at that point, or at some point, the elementals have a choice in whether or not they choose someone. But we are not elementals, and thus we do not know why they do the things that they do. Sometimes our body is very happy, sometimes it is sad. What is happening? When the previous owner of your elemental, you got to stay with me with this, okay? When the previous owner of your elemental feels pain, you feel pain. You register that pain. Pain without an apparent cause comes from your elemental because it is tied to someone else who is experiencing pain at that moment. If that person has surgery or is in an accident, you will register the pain and not know why it is there. You overcome the pain and it disappears, or it just comes and goes. Just as the physical elemental registers its past physical conditions, your astral and mental elementals also register emotional and mental impressions from the other person. If the elemental of another person is in your body, and your body does not want to be fat, but the other person eats day and night, then no matter how much you fight against that elemental, it takes its orders from the other person than from you, because of the electrical connection. If you want to control yourself, you first have to control the other person, which is possible if you can increase the control over your elemental. Health is joy for the physical elemental. The physical elemental never wants things that are against its health, but you tell it to do things that are not good. When you create glamours and illusions and vanities and ego, you are mentally disturbed. That's the bottom line. You do not know what you are doing, and you impose these things upon your elementals. Once you are born with a different elemental, your original elemental cannot return. Even if you straighten yourself out, because it cannot evict the present one. Okay, but no one's left yet, so maybe on the remote they have. But this is great. This is valuable, advanced information about how these elementals affect, our lives, our decisions, and so forth. But here's the good news. Here is the good news, and there is good news. Okay. If you start using willpower and the 3 techniques that I gave you at the beginning of the talk, purification, renunciation, and self-confession, you can discipline the elementals that you have. Now, as a side note, this is the job of the teacher. If you have a teacher, this is one of the teacher's jobs, to help you go through this process of purification, renunciation, and self-confession. If we don't have such a teacher, it is more difficult for us to do, because doing it on our own is more difficult because of these 3 elementals that are so darn smart. In the teaching, the most important thing is to be very frank and honest with yourself. It is just like adopting a child. When you adopt a child who is, let's say, 12 years old, he may frequently cry for his former mom and dad, but eventually he will forget them and become your child. See the analogy? Okay. You can stop your elemental from being negative by making conditions so good within you that you are no longer attached to the other person. You can make them beautiful friends of yours. Now I think I have enough time. I'm going to share a few more ideas here, just a couple more. This is probably a question you asked, and this is why I wanted to include it this morning. The transfer of the elementals. Did you ask yourself this question? I figured somebody would. The transfer of the elementals takes place immediately before birth. Now, the physical elemental takes the baby in the first to the 7 months, when the baby is in the womb. When the baby starts moving, which happens around 3 or 4 months, then that baby is taking on the astral elemental, either his own or someone else's. The mental elemental takes over between 5 and 9 months. This is why when you die, your elementals do not die. They go to the etheric, astral, or mental spheres as, and this is the teaching, as patches of living clouds. Then when you are going to be born, they magnetically return to you. The development of our physical body is equal to the level to which we raised our elemental. Let us say that you did not discipline your physical elemental. It will be a hindrance then on our path. When our elemental likes us, it means that we disciplined it, and it will not leave us for a long time. You are a support. We are a support and refuge for it. You are like its teacher. This is also true for the emotional, excuse me, and mental elementals. Okay, let me just say this. When we take the 5th initiation, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all the sub-initiations, that goes with each major initiation. At the 5th initiation, we leave our elementals. When our cosmic ethers here it is. When our cosmic ethers okay, totally replace our lower bodies. Now, I talked a little bit about this last week, with the other diagram. So you can go back and watch the video actually on YouTube, our White Mountain YouTube account. Okay, so that's it. You want more? It's too late. Okay, you can imagine what fun I had putting this together in such a way that we could all understand it. I would like to take time for questions, but I really think you need time to assimilate what you heard. And I invite you to send me an email. I'll be glad to answer your questions by email. And if you get a chance, today's talk will go up on YouTube and be available usually around 8, 9 o'clock, sometimes 10 or 11. Depends on the process.